When my boyfriend told me he was bisexual, the first thing I felt wasn't shock or jealousy. It was this weird, fizzy feeling in my chest, like a shaken-up soda can I'd been holding for years without realizing it. My name is Lena, I'm 24, and this is the story of how my boyfriend came out as bi, and how, somehow, our queer sides came out together. We'd been together for almost 3 years when it happened. By that point, we were deep into the comfortable stage of the relationship. Shared grocery lists, toothbrushes at each other's apartments, half our wardrobes hopelessly mixed up. His name is Mason, and he's one of those people who makes everything look easy. Easy smile, easy laugh, easy way of making friends with baristas and strangers in line at the movies. When we first met at a mutual friend's game night, he was sitting cross-legged on the floor, arguing passionately about whether pineapple belonged on pizza, and I remember thinking, I have no idea who this guy is, but he's going to complicate my life. He did, in the best way. We met in the last semester of college and started dating a few months later. There was never some big, dramatic, define the relationship conversation. It was more that one day we realized we were already acting like a couple. We were the ones texting each other photos of weird things in the grocery store, venting about our days, staying up way too late talking about everything from childhood memories to whether we'd rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses. It felt easy, like sliding into a story I already knew the ending to. Girl meets boy, they fall in love, maybe move in together, get a dog, the usual. Which is why, when things started to feel off, I didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't that we were unhappy. We still laughed a lot. We still made pancakes on Sundays and argued over which playlist to put on in the car. But there was this subtle distance, like we were both slightly out of focus for each other. He'd zone out sometimes, staring at nothing. And when I asked what he was thinking about, he'd just say, stuff, and change the subject. I'd catch myself doing the same thing, drifting off into a daydream I didn't fully understand, then snapping back with my heart racing like I'd been caught. One night, it all came to a head. It was a Friday, and we were at our favorite little bar a few blocks from my apartment. The kind of place with dim lighting, worn wooden tables, and a jukebox that always seems stuck somewhere between 90s alt-rock and guilty pleasure pop. We were seated at a corner table, sharing a basket of fries, half watching a group of people at the pool table. One of them was this woman in a cropped band tee and high-waisted jeans, laughing loudly, her hair shaved on one side and dyed a bright, impossible blue. I caught myself staring at her, following the way she moved, how confident she seemed. My stomach did a little flip I wasn't prepared for. Before I could look away, I noticed Mason's eyes were on her too. My heart dropped. We'd been in relationships before. We knew people noticed other people. It wasn't that. It was the look on his face. Not just, oh, that person is attractive, but something softer and more complicated. You okay? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He blinked, tearing his eyes away from the pool table like I'd woken him from a dream. Yeah, sorry. Zoned out. What were you thinking about? I pushed, more gently than it sounds. He hesitated. That same hesitation I'd been seeing for months. Then he took a sip of his beer, set it down very carefully, and said, "Can I tell you something without you freaking out?" I felt that fizzy feeling again, the one I didn't have a name for yet. "I'll try my best," I said. He laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. He fiddled with the label on his bottle, peeling it back millimeter by millimeter. "I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while," he said. "I just didn't know how." The noise of the bar faded into a dull hum. The blue-haired woman's laugh, the clack of pool balls, the jukebox. Everything went fuzzy around the edges. "Okay," I said. "Talk to me." He took a deep breath. His eyes flicked to the pool table again, then back to me. "I'm pretty sure I'm bisexual," he said quietly, "and I've been scared to say it out loud." Time did that weird, stretchy thing it does when your brain is trying to process something big. I heard the words. I understood them. I just didn't know how to file them into the neat mental drawer labeled us. My first thought was ridiculously mundane. Oh, that makes sense. Images flickered through my mind, offhand comments he'd made about actors being objectively hot, the way he'd complimented our friend Jamie's style a few too many times, the faint, faraway look he sometimes got when we talked about our futures like they were already set in stone. I realized I'd been holding my breath and forced myself to exhale. "Okay," I said again, because my brain hadn't caught up enough to offer anything more articulate. "Thank you for telling me." He stared at me like he was bracing for impact. "You're not mad?" "Why would I be mad?" "Because I didn't tell you sooner," he said. "Because—" He gestured vaguely toward the pool table, the world, the expectations we'd never quite named. "Because maybe it changes things. Us." I sat there for a second, tracing a finger through the condensation ring on the table. Inside, two different parts of me were having a full-blown argument. One was the anxious voice that loved neat categories and clear instructions. What does this mean? Is he going to leave you for a guy? Were you just training wheels? The other voice was quieter but steadier. He trusted you with this. Don't make his fear real. I don't know yet what it changes, I said honestly, but I know I still love you. And I know you didn't become a completely different person in the 5 seconds it took you to say that. You've always been you. His eyes got shiny in the dim light. I was so scared you'd hear bi and translate it as secretly gay and about to break up with you, he said. I mean, the thought crossed my mind for like half a second, I admitted, and that made him huff out a watery laugh. But mostly I'm just trying to understand. How long have you known? He shrugged one shoulder. Depends what you mean by known. I had crushes on boys and girls in high school, but I told myself the boy stuff was just admiration or whatever. In college, I hooked up with guys a couple times, and then buried it under 7 layers of denial and cheap beer. He paused. When we started dating, I thought maybe it didn't matter. Like, maybe it would just go away if I didn't feed it. And did it? I asked softly. He looked back at the blue-haired woman, then at a guy playing pool next to her with rolled-up sleeves and forearms that could probably bench press a small car, and then back at me. No, he said, it didn't. I nodded slowly, my mind buzzing. I glanced at the woman again, at the guy next to her, and felt that strange flutter in my stomach resurface. Stubborn, like my body was gently clearing its throat. I have a follow-up confession, I blurted before I could talk myself out of it. He raised an eyebrow. Oh? I might also be not straight, I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I don't know. I've always kind of brushed off how I felt about women because I was like, well, I'm dating a guy, so it doesn't count. But lately it's been louder. He stared at me. Hold on, he said. I finally work up the courage to come out to you, and you're like, surprise, plot twist, same hat? I burst out laughing, tension breaking like a wave. I'm not trying to steal your thunder, I said, wiping at my eyes. I swear, when you said it, I realized I'd been doing a similar thing, shoving stuff into a closet in my brain and sitting on the door. We sat there in stunned, ridiculous silence for a moment, both of us trying to recalibrate our mental relationship flowcharts. So we're both queer, he said slowly. Apparently, I said. Yeah. He let out a breath that came out half laugh, half sigh. "That actually makes me feel less alone," he admitted. "I've been thinking about telling you for months, but I didn't want you to feel like I'd tricked you into dating someone different than you thought I was." "You didn't trick me," I said. "You're still the same guy who cries at Pixar movies and dips fries in his milkshake." "That's a valid flavor combo," he protested weakly. "I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying it's very you." We grinned at each other, something new and electric humming under the familiar warmth. Around us, the bar came back into focus. The clack of pool balls, the jukebox, the bartender shouting drink orders. But it all felt different now, like we'd stepped into a parallel version of our lives where the colors were a little brighter. "Do you want to, do something about this?" I asked after a moment. "Do something as in?" "Not like something drastic," I said quickly. "Just learn, talk, figure out what it means, together." His shoulders dropped, tension he'd been carrying for way too long finally releasing. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that. A lot." We didn't suddenly become experts on queer identities overnight. If anything, the next few months were a mess of late-night conversations, awkward stumbles, and way too many tabs open on our laptops. We started small. I ordered a couple of books and zines people recommended online. He found a podcast hosted by bi folks talking about their experiences. We'd listen separately on our commutes and then dissect episodes over dinner like we were in some kind of unofficial queer book club. One night, I came over to his apartment and found him sitting cross-legged on the couch with his laptop open, expression pinched. "What's wrong?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door. He gestured at the screen. "Apparently, there's this whole stereotype that bi people are greedy and can't be faithful and are just confused and waiting to pick a side," he said. "It's a lot." I sat next to him, reading over his shoulder. "That's garbage," I said immediately. "You've been nothing but faithful to me, and we just established that identities aren't some temporary placeholder until you find the real thing." He smiled a little at that, some of the tension easing. "I know," he said. "It's just weird, seeing your fears written out as criticism from strangers on the internet." "We don't have to listen to strangers on the internet," I said. "Except the ones with cat videos. Those can stay." We made little rituals out of things. He bought a tiny bi pride flag pin and was too nervous to wear it in public at first, so he clipped it to the pocket of his hoodie and wore it around the apartment instead, testing how it felt. I ordered a rainbow enamel pin shaped like a tiny cloud and sun and pinned it to my bag. The first time we went out with them visible, just to a coffee shop downtown, my heart raced like we were doing something illicit, even though literally nobody looked twice. "You okay?" he murmured as we waited for our drinks. "Yeah," I said, fingers curled around my phone like a talisman. "Just feel like I'm walking around with a neon sign over my head that says, 'Hi, I'm not straight,' and I'm not used to that yet." "If it helps, I think you look very cool and mysterious," he said. I snorted. Yes, nothing says mystery like being too anxious to make eye contact with the barista. We both gradually got braver. A friend invited us to Pride that summer, and at first, I almost said no out of sheer panic. The idea of stepping into a space so loudly, unapologetically queer felt intimidating, like I didn't have the credentials yet. I remember confessing that to Mason in my kitchen, clutching a mug of tea like it could anchor me. "What if people think I'm just there as your straight girlfriend?" I said. "Or that I'm trying to be quirky or something?" He reached across the counter and covered my hand with his. "We know who you are," he said. "That's what matters. And Pride is for everyone under the umbrella, including people still figuring it out." So we went. We spent way too long the night before trying to decide what to wear, pulling half our wardrobes onto the bed. I ended up in a white crop top and high-waisted shorts with a rainbow bandana tied around my wrist, tiny glitter stars at the corners of my eyes. He wore cut-off jeans, a loose tank top, and finally, that bi flag pin on his chest, where the sunlight caught it as we walked. The parade was a blur of color and sound, music thumping from floats, kids on their parents' shoulders waving flags, older couples holding hands, people in outrageous costumes, and people in simple jeans and t-shirts. I remember standing there at the edge of the sidewalk, pressed against Mason's side, and feeling something in my chest loosen that I hadn't realized was clenched. For once, we weren't the different ones. We were just part of the crowd. At one point, a group walked by with a big banner that said, "Bi Pride," in block letters, the colors bright and bold. People around them were waving smaller bi flags, and one woman with a shaved head and sunglasses caught Mason's eye and held up her flag in a kind of salute. Mason, cheeks flushing, lifted his hand and waved his little pin back at her. She grinned and blew us a kiss. He turned to me, blinking fast. "I didn't know I needed that," he said quietly. "Seeing people like me, out loud." I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "Yeah," I said. "Me either." After Pride, things didn't magically become perfect, but they felt more real. We talked more openly about our attractions, not in a way that made either of us feel threatened, but in this gentle, curious way. We'd be watching a show and I'd nudge him and say, "Okay, be honest. Are you more into her or him?" And he'd pretend to deliberate very seriously before answering. Sometimes we'd both end up picking the same person, and we'd laugh about our shared taste. We set boundaries, too. There were days when one of us was overwhelmed or insecure, when a joke about a celebrity crush hit too close to an old wound. We learned to say, "Hey, I'm feeling fragile today. Can we not?" We learned that being open and honest didn't mean never feeling jealous or scared. It meant talking through those feelings instead of letting them calcify in silence. The more we explored our identities together, the more our relationship shifted into this new shape that felt expansive. Less like a straight line and more like a web of possibilities. We were still us, still the couple who burned pancakes and forgot laundry in the washer and argued about which route to take in traffic. But now there was this added layer of understanding. I didn't feel like I had to perform the cool girlfriend who is totally straight and chill role anymore. I could admit when I thought a woman was beautiful without undercutting it with a joke. He could admit when he thought a guy was hot without looking guilty. It didn't turn into some wild, open relationship storyline. We talked about it, briefly, and both realized we were content being monogamous. Our queerness wasn't a ticket out of what we had, it was a way of being more fully ourselves within it. One night, months after that first conversation at the bar, we were lying in bed, the room lit only by the soft glow of my salt lamp. Mason was on his back, one arm folded under his head, the other hand resting lightly on my hip. I was tracing little shapes on his chest with my fingertips, half asleep. "Hey," he said quietly. "Remember when I came out to you and I thought it was going to ruin everything?" "Yeah," I murmured. "You were very dramatic." He huffed a laugh. "You were surprisingly chill." "I was surprised too," I admitted. "But honestly, it feels like that was when we stopped pretending our lives had to look a certain way to be real." He turned his head to look at me. In the dim light, his eyes were soft. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For staying," he said simply. "For not making me choose between you and me." I swallowed, my chest aching in that familiar, tender way. "Thank you for helping me see myself more clearly," I replied. I think I've been not straight for a long time. I just didn't have the words. You coming out gave me permission to ask questions I'd been avoiding. He smiled, that slow, private smile that's just for me. So we're like a queer little team, he said. Exactly, I said. Bisexual boyfriend, questioning turned very definitely queer girlfriend, solving crimes and internalized biphobia together. Our superpowers are overthinking and excessive communication, he added. And snacks, I said. Don't forget snacks. We lay there in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the distant hum of traffic outside. I thought about younger versions of us, him in high school, trying to convince himself the crush on his best friend was just admiration. Me sitting in my bedroom, obsessively rewatching scenes with certain actresses and telling myself it was because I liked their outfits. I wished I could go back and tell them, "You're not broken. You're not faking. One day you'll find someone who looks at you and says, 'Hey, me too,' and it'll feel like coming home." I can't do that, but I can tell you this. When my boyfriend came out as bi, it didn't mean he loved me any less. It didn't mean he was about to run into the arms of the nearest man. It meant he trusted me enough to hand me a vulnerable piece of his truth and hope I wouldn't drop it. And when I realized there was a queer part of me too, it didn't erase our relationship. It made it richer, more honest. Our story isn't some dramatic plot twist where everything explodes. It's quieter than that. It's a series of conversations at kitchen tables and in parked cars and under blankets. It's a handful of pins on a denim jacket, a first pride, a silly inside joke about our shared crush on a TV character. It's learning to say, out loud, "I'm not straight," and hearing the person you love say, "Cool, me neither." And if you're watching this and you see yourself in any of it, in my boyfriend, in me, in the scared, messy in-between, just know this. You're not alone. There's nothing wrong with taking your time to figure it out. There's nothing wrong with discovering new parts of yourself while you're already in a relationship. The right person won't run from your truth. They'll walk into it with you. That's what we did. We walked into it together. And we're still walking, still learning, still laughing about how we both managed to come out in the same conversation over a basket of fries. Our queer sides came out side by side, hand in hand. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.